to another episode of Let's Talk Deer, brought to you by Grandpa Ray Outdoors, owned by Mr. John O'Brien. John's a Midwestern guy. He's around the Madison, Wisconsin area. He's been an agronomist for over 29 years, so he knows seed, he knows soil, and he knows what white-tailed deer need. John has a large seed company, Grandpa Ray Outdoors, but also he's in educating. He's one of the best educators, seminar, platform speaker, communicator for soil, water, and cover. The soil brings the food, the water hydrates, and the cover keeps them safe. So that's what whitetail needs. So any questions at all about seed, go to grandparrayoutdoors.com. Let's Talk Deer does receive compensation from Grandpa Ray Outdoors for mentioning him on my show. To another episode of Let's Talk Deer, hosted by Bruce Hutchin. And I'm joined together by the editor of Petersen's Bowhunting magazine, Christian Berg. Christian, welcome to the show.
Hey, welcome to you, Bruce. Thank you so much for having me.
We had a good time over. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love to take an hour out of the coronavirus quarantine and spend it with somebody.
Me too.
I don't get as much social interaction these days, so it's good to see somebody, even if it's only on a computer screen.
Well, it's just great to visit, and you've got your pulse on the industry, and that's why I wanted to visit. And originally we talked about in Facebook Live, folks. If you haven't watched the video, you can go to Facebook Live, Bruce Hutchin, and listen to that. But in that, we really were talking about the future, what we thought to the future, hunting this fall. And you said, hey, wait a minute, let's talk about right now. Let's talk about the opportunities available to people in their own state that are available right now. So let's start off right there with, give some people some positive inputs about, what they can do right now, because this show's going to air pretty much right around May 1st or so. And so let's share your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely, Bruce. We talked about in that Facebook Live the fact that obviously, coronavirus and this quarantine, lockdown, whatever you want to call it, right? It's impacted our entire country. And it's impacted every facet of American life. And unfortunately, as hunters and sportsmen, we have not been immune from that. And so if you are one of, those hunters like I am, like that I know you are, Bruce, we do a lot of hunting close to home, but we also tend to do a lot of traveling to hunt, whether it's to the state next door or even halfway across the country or farther. So the coronavirus has pretty well shut that down for this year, right? There's a lot of states that have canceled non-resident seasons. They're not selling non-resident spring tags. In the case of Canada, right, we've got a border closure. So if you had a bear hunt planned up there, that's not happening. So there's a lot of things that normally would be happening right now that aren't happening. And, let's face it, it's disappointing, depressing, whatever you want to say. But we don't want to focus on the negatives, right, Bruce? We want to focus on the positives, because this whole quarantine thing is depressing enough as it is. And so right. We all need, something to look forward to, something to feel good about, something that we can do that takes our mind off the stress and anxiety of the day-to-day and, feels a little bit normal. And so for me, for you, for all of your listeners, I think the hunting opportunities that we have right close to home are going to be more important than ever this spring and probably even this fall, because, for me, as I told you in the Facebook Live, what do I have this year? I'm not going to have a Florida trip that I would have had at the end of this month. I'm not going to have an Ohio trip that I would have had this weekend. I've got Pennsylvania turkey season coming up here in May, and that's all I have. So I'm either going to hunt turkeys here in Pennsylvania as hard and as often as I can, or I'm not going to hunt them anywhere. And so I can tell you that given the choice between those two things, I'm going to hunt them hard and often here in Pennsylvania. And I can't wait for the season to open up, because I know that there's birds in the area and I'm looking forward to chasing them. So, yeah, I think that close to home hunting is going to be huge this year. And as people have more time on their hands, I think that this might be an opportunity. You know, I was on Onyx Maps the other day, Bruce, just looking at some public hunting land that's not too far from home here and some other properties that are enrolled in public access programs. And maybe this is the year that I have the time and the interest in exploring some new ground. And boy, wouldn't it be great to use part of the turkey season to not only hunt turkeys, but maybe do some scouting for the fall with whitetails in mind, maybe finding some new areas, whether that be on public ground or public access ground, or even knocking on some doors and getting permission to hunt some new areas, because I figure, hey, this might be the year that I'm going to be do more hunting here in Pennsylvania throughout the fall than I might normally in a quote unquote normal year. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to getting started now with the idea that I may need to sort of craft or forge a better reality for myself here close to home.
I like that. And in our notes for, when we're prepping for the podcast, we talked about the 3 R's. And what are the 3 R's? They're retention, recruitment, and reactivation of hunters. And you made a point earlier that you had heard from a friend in the Pennsylvania DNR that their hunter safety course completions are up. So people are becoming hunters. And that goes on to the next step of, okay, all of a sudden we're in the coronavirus and I got to provide for my family. How do I do that? I can fish and I can hunt and I can trap and get food, process the food, and eat the food that's available. And in-state hunting licenses and fishing licenses, trapping licenses are relatively inexpensive. So, let's talk about that, about becoming prepared to be a provider from field to plate, if you will.
Absolutely. Bruce, I think that there's, it's like an onion, right? And there are several layers to the onion that we can peel back here about, the impact that this is going to have on hunting as a whole. So you talked about the 3 R's, right? Recruitment, retention, reactivation. And so from a recruitment standpoint, especially probably of younger hunters, which is critical because we've known for a lot of years, right, that as older folks are aging out of hunting, we're not bringing enough younger folks to replace them. So in other words, there are more older hunters who sort of retire from the sport than there are younger hunters coming in. And that's why we've seen a long, slow, steady decline in overall hunting numbers in America for the past, generation. So it's great to see, as people are cooped up in their homes, that the state agencies, I'm sure Pennsylvania isn't the only one that has made additional hunter safety classes available in an online format during this time. And so as Pennsylvania sees actually a doubling of graduations at this time of year that they normally would see at this time of year. So if other states are doing the same thing, that means we've got a bunch of people. And again, typically first-time hunter safety participants tend to be those kids who are 12, 13, just eligible for their first hunting license. But you're going to see some adults in there as well. So we've got this crop of people that are coming into hunting, whether that's because they're being mentored as a young person by a dad, an uncle, a grandma, whatever, someone in their family or a friend who's bringing them in. Or to your point, and we talked a little bit about this on the Facebook Live, you look at what has happened in the world over the last month, 6 weeks, and we have seen situations where people have been told to pretty much lock down, right? You're confined to your property. You can only go out if you need food or medicine or medical care. And when you do go out for food, right, I don't know what it's been like in Colorado. I can tell you here in Pennsylvania, particularly early on in this thing, you'd go to the grocery store and in some of the shelves, there would be nothing but bare white metal because there was literally no stock on the shelves, right? The meat cases were completely empty. The dairy case was empty. The egg case was empty. The canned goods aisle was empty. The toilet paper, oh, the humanity, Bruce, the toilet paper, right? Who knew? Whoever knew that toilet paper was going to be such a big deal? But the point is, right, if you didn't already have what you needed, you were kind of SOL, weren't you? You were either prepared or you were in trouble. And those were the two, right? There wasn't a whole lot of in between. There was prepared.
There was no in
and there
between.
was in trouble. There was no in between, you know? And if you had to wipe with something other than toilet paper, maybe you've got fewer T-shirts in your drawer today, Bruce. I don't know. But we don't need to go there. The point is, I think that there are a whole bunch of people out there who don't come from hunting families. They have never really thought about becoming a hunter from a recreational standpoint. But in the aftermath of what we've just been through, the idea of being a hunter from the standpoint of providing for yourself and your family and having that opportunity to do that, if and when the situation arises again, could be very appealing. And so I think that that's a great opportunity for us to recruit new people to the sport. And as we do that, I think that, you know, they're going to come to appreciate a lot of the other aspects of the hunt, you know, which is just the, you know, the exercise, the closer relationship with nature, the camaraderie with your fellow sportsmen, and they're going to become, you know, just as much a part of our community as we all are. So you've got that as well. And then the third piece, right? The reactivation, because I think that when you look at what the economy was doing over the last handful of years, right, it's just been getting better and better and better to the point for the last year or two, right, the economy has just been absolutely red hot up until this time that the coronavirus hit. So you had stock market at all-time highs, you had unemployment at all-time lows, you had lots of entrepreneurial activity, people starting up their own businesses. Things were really hopping. And what you tend to see happen when things are super, super busy at work, some people, they just don't have the time to hunt anymore. And now we've done a complete 180, right? So now we're talking about a global recession. We're talking about unemployment possibly spiking up, at least temporarily, to like depression level highs before things start to head back the other way. And so I think what you're going to see, in addition to these new younger hunters that are going to come in this year, in addition to these people that may decide to jump into the hunting community from a prepper kind of standpoint, a self-reliance preparedness, I think we're also going to see a group of hunters who may be people who have hunted on and off throughout their lifetimes, you know, since they were young, and maybe these are people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s now, and they've just been too busy the last couple of years to hunt, and they haven't bought that hunting license for whatever reason. This is the year they're going to say, I'm going to get back into hunting because A, I have the time, B, you know, I don't have as much money as I used to, but this is a cheap form of recreation. This is a cheap opportunity for me to put some food on the table, you know? So I think, you know, as terrible as all of this is, you know, I don't think anybody ever wants to repeat this. I certainly don't. I know you don't want to. Perhaps this is an opportunity for hunting as a whole where we can bring some new people into our sport and then maintain some of that gain as we head into more normal times in the future.
Yeah, case in point about the lack of available resources, i.e. food. I keep about a month's worth of Mountain House. I mean, because I use that every fall, and so I just always keep it. And so right before this started, it got really bad. I went online and went to Mountain House, and we're sorry, 3 months, we're sorry. And people had really zoomed in into the preppers world, if you will. Now, I know there's a lot of hunters who use, solo hunters and DIY hunters use Mountain House or other products. But I've told my whole family, I said, you should just go spend a couple $100, just buy a couple cases of Mountain House or buy the 10-pound bins and have it because the shelf life is forever. Am I a prepper? No. But I always had that stuff. And I think as a hunter, you've learned over the years, well, you're stockpiling things because it's going to last. And when you get ready to go, you just get the bin down. Okay, I'm going for 5 days. What do I need? So I've always got backup of food. When you have other food in camp, but I always know I have that if I have to spike out or whatever, my jet boil in my Mountain House, I'm good to go. And to the point we talked about earlier, I think this situation that we're in is going to make people think, okay, wait a minute. Do I have a jet boil? Can I cook food? Do I have food? And what's the best food to have? It's freeze dry because it lasts forever. And you can buy a month's worth of food for less than $500. And you go to a grocery store every week, that's $200. So, you just
Yep.
you just invest some money and do it, and then you've already got it there, and it's peace of mind. So then we come to hunting, and we go, wait a minute, there's bunny rabbits, and there's grouse, and there's pheasants, and there's turkeys, and right now it's a huge time for walleyes. The walleyes are spawning, so it's a walleye run. So if you can get on the shore, I know some states don't want you to go in your boat, but we won't even go there. But you have the opportunity to go out and forage for walleyes. Fishing license is $10, $20, whatever it is in your state. So now you get walleyes. Then you go turkey hunt in your state, and all of a sudden you go, okay, I'm a hunter gatherer, but I'm providing for my family. And to your point, I've got the time to do it. And if you make a couple of phone calls, get on social media, there's somebody that will help you do that. If you go, I haven't done this for a while, I've never done this, but I need to do this. There's people out there. If somebody contacts me, I'll say, okay, go here. Here's what you do. And, I can't go with you, but I'll tell you exactly where to do, how to do it, when to do it, and you'll get it done, and you're going to provide for your family. And I like that peace of mind as a hunter.
Oh, absolutely. Bruce, of course, right, as the editor of Petersen's Bowhunting, I'm known as a bow hunter, and that's mostly what I do, and mostly big game hunting. But do you know what comes to mind during times like this where you have all this uncertainty? Small game all of a sudden takes on a bigger importance when you start to think about the idea of just providing sustenance for yourself and your family, doesn't it? Because it's a lot easier to go out and get a couple of rabbits or squirrels or something like that than it is to go shoot a deer, every other week or something like that. And just to kind of tell a funny little anecdote along the lines of what you just talked about, do you know what one of the things that I made a special point to stop and get at our local Cabela's as all of this was getting more and more serious? And I kind of had an inkling that this was coming, and I could see the anxiety levels ratcheting up, and I could see the potential for this kind of a situation. I went to Cabela's and I spent $13 on a big container of 17 caliber pellets for my air rifle, because I know that when it comes to a sheer value standpoint, there's no cheaper protein available here. I live in, Pennsylvania. We've got a lot of hardwoods, and squirrels are extremely, extremely plentiful. And I know that with that one $13 canister of pellets and my 17 caliber Gammo air rifle, that I could actually provide protein for my family for months if I had to do that. And again, thankfully, right, it hasn't come to that. But I like the fact that I know that there's some ammunition that's very inexpensive, and it's never going to go bad. That can sit in my gun cabinet forever. And if I ever need it, it's there, and my air rifle is there, and I can put food on the table anytime I have to do that.
And what a great peace of mind. And, my hunting journey started quite a few years ago when I was 10 years old, but it was grouse, it was rabbits, and it was squirrels. And I helped as a young kid with my 20 grades pull the hammer back. It was an HT Harrington Richards or something, 20 gauge single shot, pull the hammer back, pull the trigger, and I provided food for our family. My father worked, and I provided rabbits, squirrels, and grouse, and we lived on a farm. And so my father worked in the city, but I learned early on, and I caught trout, and then I caught small game, and I'd take it home and I'd dress it, and my mother would get recipes from the neighbors, and we'd cook it and we'd eat it. Period.
Yeah, and to your point, about resources, you talked about how even if you've never hunted before, you can probably find somebody online to help you out. And same thing as far as taking care of these animals that you might take. If you go out and kill a rabbit or a squirrel, or you catch a couple of walleye or trout or what have you, boy, YouTube makes it really easy, doesn't it?
Real
To see,
easy.
how to clean a fish, how to fillet a fish, how to field dress a squirrel, how to skin a rabbit. All that stuff is right there, and then you can just search up for some recipes and I mean, anybody can do this, and if you have to, you will, because I guarantee that every single one of us is going to do that stuff before we starve to death.
Yeah. And it's available. So, throwing positivity, Kristen and I wanted to be positive about this whole thing. So if you're listening to this and saying, gee, they're right, go ahead and find somebody to walk alongside you, or re-engage what you already know. Get your old 22 out of the closet, or your shotgun, and check with your state, find out what's legal, and start foraging. Become a hunter gatherer. And I know a lot of people are growing gardens who haven't done gardening in a long time, and it's simple. You don't have to have a lot of area. You can just have pots and everything, couple seeds. You can grow tomatoes. There's a lot of things you can do just on your deck in pots.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people who have gone out and gotten chickens during this too. People are
Yep.
getting because typically this time of the year is when your tractor supplies and your other farm and feed stores around the country are doing their spring chick days. And so you can put an order in, and get a dozen chicks. And then when they come in, right, of course, you pick those up. So I've seen people building chicken coops and things like that. And again, it's all connected, right? I mean, those are the same people who are going to consider becoming hunters, or the people who want to have those chickens so that they have a supply of eggs and things like that. So it's an absolutely great opportunity for us to reach out to people, and maybe they're going to see us in a bit of a different light, not these kooky crazies who are just out there killing for fun, but all of a sudden it's going to make a lot more sense. Like, oh, you guys have full freezer over there. Hey, maybe this is an opportunity. Here's a thought. You live in a suburban neighborhood, and maybe there's only a couple other hunters in the whole neighborhood. How about get some venison or elk or walleye fillets out of that freezer and head over to a neighbor's house and share some of that? There's an opportunity to make an impact on somebody during this time, isn't it? Or say, hey, I've got extra, I've got more than I need. Let me share with you, and it's my pleasure to do that, because this is a way for me to help take care of my community.
One thing we mentioned, we're going to do a segue here, that right now manufacturers and all our local mom and pops, even Cabela's or Bass Pro, but mom and pop stores, they put their orders in for their equipment last winter, last fall, all the shows, and all of a sudden now we don't know where that supply chain is. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's very, very interesting, and it's something that I'm pretty close to at the magazine, because we work with manufacturers all the time throughout the year, because we're constantly getting product in to test and evaluate and sharing that with our readers. One thing that I can tell you is that over the last month, I've been in touch with multiple companies, whether that's major bow manufacturers, bow hunting accessory manufacturers, apparel manufacturers, you name it. Most of these companies, because of mandates from the governors in the various states, are either shut down completely, reduced to a skeleton crew, or in some cases, these companies have repurposed their operations to produce things that are needed during this pandemic. So you've got, some backpack manufacturers that have switched over to making protective face masks. You've got, other companies that might be making hand sanitizer and that sort of thing. So regardless, right, bottom line, whether you're shut down, whether you're making other things, whether you're just sort of barely maintaining a skeleton crew, there's nothing like we would normally have in terms of the manufacturing. And when this is over, whenever this is over, it's not like all these companies are just going to announce a day and tell everyone to come back to work on Tuesday and we'll pick right up where we left off, because, if you need raw materials, if you need, plastics, metals, fasteners, you name it, who knows where all that stuff is at this point, because the entire global supply chain has been disrupted. You talked about retailers putting in orders, say at the SHOT Show or the ATA show, right, for product that they want to have this summer to sell to people in advance of hunting season. Put yourself in the shoes of the manufacturers as well, because think about the manufacturer who goes to the SHOT Show or the ATA show or another trade show, and they're showing all these products. Most of the new products that are shown at those shows, the manufacturers are actually showing prototypes or pre-production models that demonstrate what the product is going to be like, but then they've contracted to either get the raw materials they need to manufacture those final products at their factories, or they've actually outsourced manufacturing, right, overseas, and so they've sent a huge check to a factory in China or Taiwan or wherever, and they're waiting now for that product to be built, placed in a shipping container, and arrive in the United States with the idea, right, as they're taking orders from all these retailers, we're going to have this product by May 1st or June 1st. And so we'll turn around and get that out to all of the retailers so that during the summer buying season leading up to hunting season, people can go get those products. Well, I have a feeling, unfortunately, that what we're going to see through no fault whatsoever of these manufacturers is that there are a whole bunch of new for 2020 products that are going to become new for 2021 products, because they're simply not going to be built, or if they are, they're simply not going to arrive on retail shelves in time to be meaningfully in existence for this year. So I really think that from a product development standpoint, this coronavirus thing is almost going to set the entire outdoor industry back like a year. So all these things that companies were planning to introduce this year, they're probably going to carry a lot of it over to 2021, because if you had something brand new this year and you barely were able to get any of it out to the marketplace, you're not going to have the money to reinvest in updating again and having a whole new collection of products for 2021 when you never even were able to sell any of your 2020 stuff. So from a product development standpoint and a product availability standpoint, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the retail landscape looks like this year.
This is Bruce Hutchin with a special message about my relationship with Burner.com. Burner HD is a non-lethal pistol that's available now on the web at Burner.com. If you go to the web and use my promo code LTD2020, you're going to get a 10% discount on all Burner product. So again, Let's Talk Deer has a discount, promo code LTD2020 for all Burner product. Go check them out. They're great. Yeah, and I think about how many guns have been sold in this country, and I don't know what configuration, the firearms are, but we know the tremendous run on that and tremendous run on ammunition. How is it in the archery world? I know,
Well,
that's your world.
well, the firearms industry is interesting because, the last couple of years wasn't actually that strong for the firearms industry. And there were quite a few gun manufacturers that were doing deep discounting to move product. And so there was actually a lot of built up inventory, I think, in the gun supply chain, finished guns, I mean, sitting in warehouses. And as we've all seen, right, the background checks since this coronavirus thing has come along have been like through the roof. Coronavirus, I will say this, Bruce, this is my humor segment for today's podcast. The coronavirus is the best gun salesman since President Obama. Okay.
Yes, amen to that. Agreed.
So the firearms manufacturers have actually been blessed by this, I think, in a strange way, because they've been able to move a lot of inventory that they've been sitting on, and it's been good for them. And I think that product availability is probably still in pretty good shape there, because there was inventory available for demand that wasn't there, and so now the demand is meeting with the inventory, and I think things are moving. On the archery side of things, I think that, it's funny, one thing that we joke around about at the office is we realize that bow hunting as a community relative to gun hunting is, we're just an order of magnitude smaller. In other words, bow hunting is like a tennis ball, and gun hunting is like one of those giant beach balls that people bat around at the baseball games, And so we say we're like a boil on gun hunting's butt. You know what I mean? We're just like a zit on the back of gun hunting,
Yeah, but ATA is a small family, though, in a huge industry, which is a billion-dollar industry. Archery is, but you go to ATA and it's a small community. It really is.
Oh, it's so much smaller. And so, the reason I bring that up is to provide some context where, while like an ammunition manufacturer, like think about Federal Ammunition and how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of rounds, they must produce each year. And then step that down to a family-owned broadhead manufacturer. They may only produce, I don't know, a couple 100,000 broadheads a year, maybe. And
right.
So, and the way that they're set up, right, is they order inventory every year, and they probably tie up most of the operating capital that they have to get the raw materials or to order the manufacturing, and then when they get that inventory, they sell it out to the retailers and they replenish their cash supplies, and that does them for next year. So when you have an interruption in that kind of brings a company of that size and scope to sort of a standstill, where if you're sitting on 100,000 broadheads now, you've spent all your money to produce them. Now you've got them, but if you don't have them at the right time, you can sell a lot of broadheads in August, but how many broadheads can you sell in February? None, really. And even, no, because even if I need broadheads, I'm not buying them in February. What's the point? As a consumer, I'm going to wait until 2 weeks before opening day. You know what I mean?
Because I know what I need. I know the grains and everything. I know exactly what I need. So it's just, I got 3 in my quiver, and I'm going to get 3 more.
Yeah, that's it. So, so it's just for the archery industry, it's different. And then the other thing for the archery industry, when the smaller you are, the less margin for error you have. So I know what you see happen is there are really 2 things that happen in this is all business, but of course I see it in the archery industry because that's where I'm at. When a company comes out with something under normal conditions, normal business conditions, they have to make a forecast. Okay, let's say we've got a new bow sight this year, and we think it's really neat, and we think people are really going to love this thing, but how many people are really going to buy it? In other words, how many of these things are we going to order? Because if we order not enough, right? We've got all this demand and we can't make the money that people want to buy. But if we order too many, then we've got all this stuff sitting here, right? And so the companies have to try and figure out now. That's hard to do, by the way. Forecasting, that's hard to do for any business. In even under normal or good business conditions. Now you take this coronavirus situation and you say, okay, how many people do we think are going to want to buy that new $1,000 bow, this year as opposed to a normal year? And I don't know what the answer is to that, but these companies, as they come back online, they're going to have to make some hard decisions about how much of our manufacturing capacity do we run? Do we just bring everybody back and try to get back to our historical production levels? Or in some cases, do we feel we need to ramp up production? Or in other cases, do we feel like maybe we're only going to ask half of our employees to come back because we really don't know what business climate is going to be like here for the rest of this year? So I certainly don't have the answers to the questions, but I know that these are the kind of questions that people in our industry are dealing with, and there's no easy answer.
There really aren't, and we're not going to know because we've already seen the misinformation about modeling of the coronavirus, and that the world is loaded with that. And so now you and I own Christian and Bruce's archery site company, and we sell 10,000 units a year. That's what we've sold in our little niche. At ATA, people come in, we know we're going to send 10,000 units. This year, we don't know if we're going to sell 1,000 units. We really don't, because it's mid-level, but it's a couple $100, and are people going to want to have our upgrade? I don't know. Getting back to your point, the 2020 model and marketing always sells the new things, that, the new sexy things, and I got to have it. Mm-hmm. And, so it's an interesting thing. But folks, think about what we're talking about here, and don't go into your retailer and say, how come you don't have this? How come you don't have that? Okay, make a friend of them. Be their best friend. Just like I have a local coffee roaster here, and I sent out a big post for him. Buy locally. Support your local people and buy what they have. If you can. If you can't buy anything, certainly don't. And don't spend money that you don't have. That's the other thing. Be really careful how you use your credit card today, please. I'd say that to everybody.
I think you touch on something important, though, and I probably should have mentioned this already, but, if you're a bow hunter, but of course you're talking to all kinds of hunters. If you're a hunter, period.
Well, bow hunters mostly. 80% of my audience are bow hunters.
Okay. But if you're a hunter, you're an angler, and I don't know what it's like in your area, but I imagine it's much the same. A lot of our local pro shops also offer bait and tackle because that's a nice seasonal complement to the spring when
margins are high margin.
Yeah. If you can afford it, go out of your way to go get a dozen minnows or a couple dozen night crawlers or some pack of hooks from your local tackle shop, and make a point of maybe calling the local pro shop. Maybe you don't need a dozen arrows, but maybe you could use a half a dozen just to have in reserve, and maybe you just get a half a dozen arrows and have the local pro shop fletch those up for you this year, because that guy probably has seen his income cut in a quarter or a tenth of what it normally would be for the last couple of months. And if you want him to be there so that when you accidentally cut your string in November and your rut is in jeopardy because you need bow repairs ASAP, it's going to take all of us helping these guys to keep it together so that they're still here for us, in the future. And so let's all show our support for one another by supporting our local sporting goods stores.
And saying that, you have a special now. You mentioned on Facebook Live, so
you can also
time.
Yes, yes. You can also support your favorite bow hunting magazine. You know, it's funny, Bruce, because people think, um, if you're on an outdoor TV show per se, or if you're the editor of a hunting magazine, that it's, some big, big thing. But the truth of the matter is, right, really, I work for the bow hunters of America who subscribe to the magazine, and I have the privilege of creating content along with the rest of our team, uh, to educate you, to entertain you. And without you, right, we can't do what we do. During this coronavirus period, we have actually made a decision to offer a quarantine special, if you will. And so Petersen's Bow Hunting and actually a number of other magazines that are published by Outdoor Sportsman Group, we're offering $5 subscriptions. So the $5 footlong worked so well for Subway, for all those years. We're doing $5 subscriptions. So for $5, basically the cost of one overpriced coffee, you can get an entire year of Petersen's Bow Hunting delivered to your door. And that's actually the lowest price that we've ever offered for a subscription. And I don't know how long they're going to keep it in place, but they did say it's going to be a limited time deal. So if you're not a subscriber, but you're a bow hunter, and maybe you've read our magazine in the past, or you thought about signing up, just head on over to bowhuntingmag.com. There's a button right there on our homepage. You can sign up. And honestly, most of us waste $5 on all kinds of stuff all the time. I mean, you'll never miss the $5, but I think you'll enjoy and appreciate getting that magazine in your mailbox every month. So thank you for the shameless plug there,
Shameless
Bruce.
plug. I wanted to make sure we get it out. We talked about, we're going to segue, folks. We're talking about the fall season. We already know where we are with the lack of non-residents being able to travel and be able to hunt. And I had 3 turkey hunts that are squashed, and that's okay. Because one, I'm at risk, so I shouldn't be traveling. It's just, I shouldn't be doing it. And so that's okay. But we talked about the opportunities that now are at hand for people that are thinking, hey, I'd like to go out west. I missed, in Colorado, you had to have it in by April 7th this year, and I missed a draw, but leftover tags. Let's talk about that opportunity that is for everybody.
Well, yeah, we talked, can't remember if it was during the Facebook Live or before we even started, but I had mentioned to you, for example, I just drew a really good elk tag for Montana. And this was a tag that in the past had taken me 5 years to draw. And this year I was able to draw this tag with no points. So that was like, wow, I really got lucky. But before I submitted my application, I was talking to the outfitter that I hunt with out there, and he mentioned
And who is
to me
that?
that
Might as well give him a plug.
might as well give Rich Schneider a plug, my good buddy Rich Schneider with J&J Guide Service. So you can Google J&J Guide Service in Montana, find Rich's website, but yeah, he's spectacular. But I was talking to Rich and I said, I'm thinking about putting in for this tag again. I know I don't have really good chance to draw it, but what do I have to lose, And he mentioned that he had been in contact with the Montana Outfitters Association, and he had been told, and this was only a few days before the deadline, that non-resident applications were down like 40% this year. So that kind of made, my eyes light up, because I was like, that means I've got better odds, to draw this. So I think that what you've seen because of all this uncertainty but created by the virus is most of your western states that do these limited entry draws have all seen a significant decrease in applications. And so that's kind of having like a 1-2 effect for us as hunters. For those who are entering the draws, it means you have a better chance to actually get those tags that you want. And then for those who haven't entered the draws but might still be interested in going to some of these states to hunt, you might find that 2020 is a bit of an anomaly in that there are going to be a lot of leftover licenses in states and in units where normally you can't even get a license if you enter the lottery. So this is going to be a year, if you are one of those people who travels regularly, but you've been a bit up in the air this year, or if you're just somebody who's always been thinking for years and years, someday I'm going to go to Colorado and hunt elk. Someday I'm going to go to Wyoming and hunt antelope. Someday I'm going to do this, do that. 2020 might be your year. And so if you've had a hunt that you've been interested in, I would say, go to that state's DNR website, figure out when the draw results are going to be announced, and see what the leftover status is for the areas and the species that you want to hunt, because you may just find that this is a year that you could get that tag that you didn't think you were ever going to get.
And the other thing we talked about is that there's a lot of people that have contracted with an outfitter, paid a deposit, and realized there's no way I'm going to be able to make the hunt. It's just, not going to be able to do it. So they talk to the outfitter, and I think to a man, to a woman, they're going to say, okay, come next year. They're going to give them, the opportunity. So that leaves some unused inventory for all these outfitters. And we're talking a lot of outfitters. I know people that were supposed to go to Alaska, brown bear hunting, Kodiak Island, and that's a pricey hunt. And that got shut down. So everything got moved to next year. And then there's all those people that they can't hunt. They physically can't hunt bear, even though, the tags were available. But you come to we were talking about Kansas or Iowa, even Colorado or any other state where you say, I paid my deposit to hunt Kansas and I was all set up for the draw. Now I can't go. So that gives you, Kristen, the opportunity, possibly, if you do draw that Kansas tag, to reach out and say, hey, I got a tag. What do you think? And, I'd rather have a couple $1,000s in my pocket rather than zero. That's my thinking. Your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. Here, let me give you an example from my own family, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. My wife and my 2 kids, right? We were going to LA this summer for vacation. We were going to go to Los Angeles and go see Hollywood and spend some time on the beaches, head up to Malibu, spend a few days at Disneyland, right? The whole perfect family vacation. Well, is there any of that happening now, Bruce? No, right? I had plane tickets booked. I had amusement park tickets booked. I had hotels booked. What happened, right? All these providers, your hotels, your attractions, your airlines, they've all offered sort of unlimited flexibility right now because they realize that everyone's plans have been turned into chaos, right? So I've been able to get refunds on all of those things. I also would have had the option to reschedule all those things and postpone to 2021. And that's the same thing that outfitters are doing. They're giving everybody a little bit more flexibility, or a lot more flexibility than you normally might have when it comes to these hunts. And so I know an awful lot of outfitters have rolled things forward. They're going to work with their existing clients to accommodate everybody and make sure, that they're able to come and do those hunts when it makes sense for them. And to your point, that's going to open up opportunities this fall, I think, if you're willing to get online, do some research, find some tags, and then identify outfitters in those areas. I think what you're going to find is a lot of these outfitters that normally might be booked up 2, 3, 4 years in advance are going to have some openings this fall because of exactly what you said, Bruce. And you may be able to negotiate some pretty good deals on hunts this year if you're willing to be flexible about exactly where you want to go and when you want to go. You may want to go the first week of November, but the outfitter might tell you, hey, I'm booked that week, but I've got 2 openings the last week of October, and I'll give them to you for, half off or something like that, then jump on it. So yeah, there's going to be some opportunities out there for sure.
So people, if you're able, do some planning right now. As soon as you're hearing this podcast, go, dang, that's right. Call up a buddy or do solo, whatever you need to do. But it could be something that you wouldn't be able to do, you might have the opportunity to do. That's what Christian and I are sharing with you. I want to talk right now about here I am, the new hunter, or as you said earlier, you're going to use turkey season to kind of scout out some new places because there might be some opportunities to hunt locally and you can't go to different states. So right now, I'm telling everybody that I talk to, you better make sure, one, you've got landowner permission where you used to hunt, and then find out some different areas. And if you haven't been a hunter, you better get Onyx maps, whatever, get on Google Earth, figure out, okay, what do I want to hunt, and put boots on the ground and go start knocking on some doors or contacting people, because you're going to find it's going to be extremely competitive to find private land. Now, the wildlife management areas, I'm going to think that they're going to see a huge increase in people. Your thoughts?
Well, I do. I definitely think there's going to be more people out there in the local woods. Yeah, the public land is likely to be more pressured. The competition for the private land. I think your advice as far as permissions is always valid, probably even more so now. If you're not making sure that you have a good relationship with those people who own properties where you have permission to hunt, shame on you. I would like to think that every single one of those folks is on your Christmas card list, or you're making sure that they get a hind quarter off of that deer that you took there last year, or you've brought over some. I have a local butcher that I use who's great. He's a Mennonite, and he does a great job, and he makes all kinds of stuff. He makes a sweet bologna that is just out of this world, and I always make sure that this one gentleman who owns one of my favorite hunting spots, I always bring him over a nice sweet bologna, and it's a small gesture, but he really appreciates it, and that's a very, very small price to pay for knowing that I'm going to be welcome there again when I show up next year and I want to go hunt. A big thing about hunting, especially on public land, and we write about this all the time in Petersen's Bowhunting. A big part of hunting on public land is not only hunting the game that you're after, but hunting the other hunters, right? And knowing what they're doing, where they're hunting, and how their activity is likely to impact game movement, and how can you set yourself up to take advantage of that. So, yeah, that's going to be more critical this year too. So the more time that you can get out there scouting now, whether that's on public land, figuring out maybe ways to get in a little bit more deep, maybe ways to access some pieces of public ground that might not be quite as accessible. And if it's private land, then yeah, shoring up those existing permissions, maybe trying to make some contacts or do some networking to get some new land. I mean, that's never a bad idea, but it's an even better idea if that's going to be, they say never put all your eggs in one basket, Bruce, but this year, close to home might be the only basket that you have. So if you're going to have to put all your eggs in there, make sure you've got as many eggs in there as you can have. I guess.
Yeah, my notice, just be really flexible and be proactive and start today. I mean, just start today and doing everything that you just said, and do it, because you might find, oh, I'm sorry, my cousin, my other family members haven't been hunting in a while, and all of a sudden, they've asked, they're coming back and we're going to hunt. We're going to drive deer this year. I can remember back when I started, we used to have 20, 30 people driving deer and 10 standards. And we just hunt the whole ridge, and that might be 5 different farms. Well, times have changed now, but I can see us getting back to deer drives on the farm, the home farm, this year, where we're going to shoot a lot of does. because we're going to shoot a lot of meat because people are going to say, I want to take a couple of deer home, and our farm can support that. But given that, if you haven't paved the way really starting today, you might find yourself left out. That's my point I wanted to make.
That's a good point.
Makes sense. Well, we've been going for about an hour here, Christian. This has been, super. We had about 15 minutes on Facebook Live. Folks, go to Bruce Hutchin on Facebook and just listen to it. And then this podcast will be up the 1st of May. And thank you so much for taking time out. And I know this is a good break for you, good break for me from our quarantine madness, that's for sure.
Well, it was a good break, and the time always goes by quickly. I need to get back to editing some articles for our July issue, Bruce. So this was a great break, and I always enjoy spending time with you. I wish you and your grandson great success this year, and if he can get some good experiences under his belt and hopefully have the chance to fill a tag, I know that that's going to be something that neither one of you will ever forget. That's for sure.
Yeah, we're going to go up to Wyoming to a ranch, center of the nation, and with Guy and Shannon Howell and the great people up there in the northeast corner of Wyoming. And they graciously said, hey, come on up and let's get your grandson his first antelope. So that's where we're heading. And yeah, it's memories about to happen. That's for darn sure. Christian, one more thing before you go. How do people get in touch with you? And then we'll close the show.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If people would like to connect with me, certainly feel free to do so either on Facebook or Instagram. You can find me on both of those platforms with a really simple handle. It's C Berg Bowhunt. And you'll find me right away on either platform at that. And of course, Petersen's Bowhunting, we've already mentioned. So if you want more information about the magazine, just jump on our homepage at bowhuntingmag.com or follow us on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And we'd love to have you part of our community there. So thanks again, Bruce.
Thank you, sir.